Yeah, we're getting to that point in the build where trying to button up a bunch of smaller projects, kind of in prep to get the body on and maybe even start thinking about doing some body work. I'm still waiting on my wheels, tires and wheels. Those are still on my back order list. Hopefully those will be in soon. I guess they've had some issues getting those, but I can continue marching on. Plenty of other stuff to do. So basically this video is going to have a bunch of little small stuff kind of worked into one video. You'll see, let's see, a defroster, well, defogger at best. I doubt it'd defrost anything, but I'm hoping it'll defog my window. I'm buttoning up the dash wiring, getting the gauges wired in. I put in a rear auxiliary fuse panel just to kind of make wiring a little easier, reduce the number of runs front to back. I made a little custom box for my ignition switch, keyed ignition switch, and a couple other little things. So this video is going to have you bouncing around a little bit, but that's kind of where we are, buttoning things up. So I thought I'd take a little break from twisting wires and crimping crimps to do a little walkthrough of what I'm up to on the wiring part of things. Wiring is a difficult thing to video. It doesn't really work. You know, it's hard to see, kind of hard to see what you're doing. It's just usually me hunched over a spaghetti full of copper and twisting things together, hoping they work okay. I'll also maybe talk a little bit about what I wished I'd known going into the wiring. It's a little maybe specific to my project here, but I would have, knowing what I know now, I probably would have done a few things differently. So I'll go over that real quickly here as well. But let's jump into this. Well, I'll show you what I've done and walk you through where we are. So here's what we got going on in the back here with wiring, kind of buttoning it up here as well. You can see the battery, the terminals coming off the battery. There is a the 12 volt constant and ground cable. These go directly to the Holly. It needs its own direct power source to the battery. The cutoff switch, the battery cutoff switch. This is a a huge help during the construction of the car. So it's kind of funny, I originally put that in there thinking, you know, it's going to be kind of a nice, maybe even a theft deterrent, but just kind of a safety thing when I'm not using the car or it's parked for a while, just unplug the battery. And that's kind of where I saw the limits of that switch. But the reality is, during the wiring, if it's one of the first things you put in, you have the ability to turn on and off the battery or disconnect the battery from the rest of the car while you're doing the wiring. And it's a lot easier than messing around with the terminals each time. So this thing's been a huge help for during the wiring of the car. And then here in the back, you can see I've done an auxiliary fuse box in the back here, and it's activated or via that relay there. So it comes off the accessory position, so it's not live all the time. It comes off the accessory position of the key up front. And what this has allowed me to do is it reduces the runs from the front to the back with cables. I'm going to power my seat heaters with this. I'm going to power a charging station, USB charging station for phones and tablets and things like that. And anything else I want to do, I have a nice convenient power source there. The lead runs directly from the battery to that fuse block, or actually to the relay, then to the fuse block. So I've got a pretty high current capability there too. I guess up to about 30 amps, although I can't imagine what I'd ever need that for. But yeah, just to kind of keep things clean and organized with the wiring, this seemed to be the right way to do it. I am in the process of buttoning this up now. I've got most of the connections made. So I mentioned earlier on things I would have liked to have done, things I would have done differently had I known what I know now. So first and foremost, I'm not using the factory 5 gauges. I'm not using any of the gauges kind of that are similar to that. You saw in my previous build with the gauges that I'm using are these right here, a couple of Dakota digital gauges. So what's different about them is they connect to a CPU. I guess that's a CPU. I don't know. It's the point where all the wires connect to, and then from there, via a Cat5 cable, that then connects directly to the 2 gauges. So all the wires don't individually go to the gauges, they go to this instead. It's great because it combines all of the connections in one neat place. Everything's labeled. Makes installation a lot easier and reduces a lot of the wiring back here. The downside is that it doesn't really agree with the factory 5 wiring harness in terms of its layout. So a lot of the wires that are here in that harness are just no longer needed. Very little of the factory wiring still exists here. Temporarily, I've got my ignition stuck in this piece of plexiglass. It allows me to kind of keep that section protected and in order while I'm finishing up the wiring. You know, I'll get to a certain point in the wiring and then I'll check it. I'm checking as I'm going. So I'm not doing a blanket wire and then make a bunch of connections and then turn the key on and hope I don't see smoke. Instead, I'm doing it step by step. So I'll make, you know, half dozen connections, turn the key on, double check all my wiring, and go from there. And that saved me a few times. You know, I have found I've made a mistake. Nothing traumatic, nothing that led to spark or smoke, but definitely would have led to a horn not working, for instance. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping to. Oh, one other thing. I ended up moving all of the Holley Sniper connections to the inside of the firewall here. I just felt better about that. So my fuses for the Sniper are right there. I'm going to fix those underneath the dash so they're accessible. But it keeps the engine bay cleaner. You know, I've only got those things now to contend with going in. Through the firewall, no external fuses or anything like that showing here. No relays, for instance, in the engine bay, not at least as it pertains to the motor. I still have yet to clean this up. I'm going to tighten things up there as well. And now we're getting into the deep side of the far less glamorous side of the build here. Little things like courtesy lights are obviously important and easiest to do kind of in the beginning stages of the wiring, or at least middle stages of the wiring where you still got good access to everything. So these are little LEDs that I ordered. They're like $2 each. I actually have a bunches of these things from some past projects I'd worked on. But yeah, a couple bucks each. They're, I believe they are, if I remember right, they're license plate LEDs. They're bomb-proof little things. They're really rigid, put together well, and relatively bright. And they're going to work perfectly for some courtesy lighting. And I made these little brackets out of some leftover stainless steel. I'm gonna get these things pre-assembled, and got a series of these lights that are going in up under the dash, and then several in the trunk area. They work great, and certainly can't complain about the price. Those brackets that I'm mounting these LED courtesy lights on are brackets that I made to support my dash. Because my dash is a different design, it required some additional support down low. But they ended up being a perfect spot to mount the LEDs because it got it out further away from the dash or away from the frame, so I'm able to light more of the footwell as well as kind of our laps, I guess you could say. So in total, there are 3 of these little LEDs, one over the passenger side, one over the center console, one over the driver's side. My goal with making my own turn signal lever, basically I wanted it to kind of present where normal turn signal would be in a car you drive every day. So that meant it couldn't just be a toggle switch that sat flush on the dash. It needed to kind of protrude out about 2.5, 3 inches or so it would kind of get closer to the back of the steering wheel. And that involved making a handle, basically a switch extension. And that's what you see me making here. Started with aluminum tube, and I'm drilling it out to accommodate the switch body. And as you'll see a little bit, I put a few details on the handle itself to kind of spruce it up, make it look more than just like what it is, which is aluminum tube. But yeah, so I'm gonna leave it extra long and then cut it to length once I get it in the car and see how it feels. And here's what the almost finished turn signal lever looks like. Kind of an atypical turn signal switch. But it actually, and then obviously the steering wheel's not in all the way, and that's why I still have to trim this to length. I'm not exactly sure what length I'm going to want this at, so I left myself plenty of meat to cut off here, but I suspect I'm going to lose about 3/4 of this when the steering wheel's all the way seated. But you can see, works like a regular turn signal. Up, down, and in a comfortable position driving, so not unlike standard turn signal, but uses just regular switch. There, let's try it and keep it in frame. Uses a regular switch, and all I did, as you saw, is I turned this piece of aluminum so it meets up with the body of this the switch lever itself. The little arm that comes out of the switch that you actually flick, that's the switch lever. We're going to call that the switch lever. And then I machined this aluminum piece to accept that, and then epoxied it in place. And it's definitely not going anywhere. And like I said, works like a charm. So there's my version of a turn signal. I decided not to do a heater in my car. I'm just going to do heated seats. But one thing that has concerned me is having a defroster. And as you know, up until fairly recently, I owned a Jeep, and I live on the seacoast here in Maine. We have some pretty damp mornings. I tend to be out and about pretty early. So with my Jeep, I noticed if I left the top down, I would get basically my windshield would fog up on those early cold mornings until just a little bit of heat started coming out of my defroster, and it was almost an instant fix. So I decided to go ahead and try to put some sort of defroster, or maybe defogger is the right term here, into this car, but I didn't want to go through the expense of doing a full heater. So I decided to kind of do a little bit of a hybrid. If my thoughts are right on this, it'll circulate just enough warm air over the windshield on the inside, just to defog it on some of those early morning rides. I'm not going to do a roof on this. I'm probably not going to do windshield wipers. But like I said, the fogging up in the morning was a concern. So this is what I did. It's kind of the poor man's defroster, I guess. Can't complain about the price. I think in parts and all total, I'm in this to the tune of about $9. That was how much the little blower motor cost. So here we go. This is what it looks like. So you can see that it's a simple little blower motor. I got a little 12-volt motor. I've used these in the past. So I basically made a little adapter that converted its square output. I'm not going to be able to show you this, but the square output here to a round one, and then just used a regular vent, a semi-flexible vent hose here. Again, there's not a lot of heat going to go through this. Now, this is where the heat's coming from. It pulls directly from the engine bay. Banking on a couple of things here. Obviously, this space heats up pretty quickly just on my couple of idles that I've run it to date. You know, this puts off some heat pretty early on. So I figure I'm going to be drawing some heat directly from the motor when I started in the morning, and I'm also banking on this cover building up some heat from sitting in here, and the kind of acting as a heat sink. So when the fan draws in, it's drawn past this piece of aluminum here, and again adding to a little bit of the heat. My experience has been with the defroster, as soon as you are a little bit above the ambient temperature, air temperature, it defogs. So the fog in the windshield goes away. So I'm just kind of looking for a couple extra degrees and a little bit of warm air washing across the inside of the windshield. So we hope it works. You know what? If it doesn't, I'm out $9 and about an hour and a half of labor. No biggie. So that's where we sit there. Hopefully it works. I'll give you an update on this at some point. I've been struggling where to put my key, my ignition switch, and kind of wanted to keep the dash as it is, didn't want to add anything to that, thought about a push button, but then decided to keep it simple and go with a standard key. Rotary style ignition switch, so key operated ignition switch. So I decided to put it in this little aluminum box that I made down low here, and you know, it's nice, it's out of the way, it's kind of looks pretty good, I think. I'm gonna, you know, obviously it'll upholster in to match everything else. There's cup holders are gonna go in here, and then I'm making a couple of little trays that recess to the right and left for cell phone, just to be able to sit my phone there. My wife can sit her phone there. Not that I'm going to be on my phone when I'm driving around, but it might be nice to look down and glance at my navigation from time to time. But yeah, so that's my solution. quick and easy solution for a good place to put a key. And it works. You turn it and things make noise. So things are starting to come together here.